Hi, my name is Michelle. This is my channel, Literally Me, and I'm here to talk to you about books. Today, I thought I would do a video featuring 7 little books that you can read in 1 or 2 sittings, maybe if you have a day off or a weekend. For me as a reader, there's nothing more satisfying than just being able to sit down and read an entire book in one go. I love having between 2 to 5 hours to just sit and read. And I think depending on how fast you read, I know we all read at a different pace, but these are short little books that anybody should be able to get through in a reasonably short amount of time. They also are very impactful for their size. And I also believe that, it's more important to read well than it is to read fast, but that considered, I still think that these are short books that pretty much anybody could get through in a reasonably short amount of time, 1 or 2 sittings. So let's go. The first book I wanted to talk to you about came into my attention via Russell at Ink and Paper Blog. He's one of my favorite booktubers of all time. Check out his channel if you haven't. Anyway, he was talking about this little book called Address Unknown by Katherine Kressman Taylor. This book was first published in a magazine called Story in the States in 1938, just as the rise of Nazism was coming into effect in Germany. Now, this is told in epistolary format in a series of letters between 2 friends. One of the men is an art dealer in San Francisco. His friend is a man who decides to move back to his home country of Germany. What happens in this is so impactful. It demonstrates the power of putting pen to paper, the power of language, and describes in vivid detail the erosion of a friendship over time and just exactly how Nazism was able to have such a corrosive effect and deeply affect people. One of the major questions is, how could something like this happen? We all know the historical events that took place, so I won't go into that. But what this book does is use the power of the written word to tell a great story about history and the importance of what we consume, the language we speak, just having an awareness of what's going on. And what happens with this is so insidious. It was just a jaw dropper. It's only about 70 some pages long. There is a foreword and there is also an afterword by her son. So yeah, if you are at all interested, this is worth every minute of your time. I promise you, you will not forget this book anytime soon. I had to get it from the United States. It was not available here in Canada. But I'm sure you'd be able to get it from an independent bookstore or your library. So, Address Unknown by Katherine Kressman Taylor. Great book. The second one I wanted to talk to you about is a little book I randomly came across at the bookstore, and I am so happy I did. This book is called The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. This is by a South Korean author named Sun-Mi Hwang. I'm sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. As you can see, there's some beautiful art in this book. There are little line drawings interspersed throughout, which I absolutely loved. And this story is focused on a little hen named Sprout. We follow Sprout on her journey. One day she decides that she's absolutely fed up of laying eggs to be consumed by other people and taken from her and such. So we follow her journey on a farm. She decides to escape and go live in the wild as a wild hen and raise her very own egg. She wants nothing more than to be a mother. And for anyone who's either had children or even people like me who have never had children, this will hit you hard. It's a mix between Animal Farm and Charlotte's Web, 2 other very impactful novels. So yeah, it's charming, it's devastating in all the right ways, and it comes in at about, just not even 150 pages. It's about 120 or so pages. Like I said, you could easily probably read this on a weekend or a day, depending on how fast you read, but it's absolutely lovely. Highly recommend The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. Next book I want to talk about is one by a new author to me. I just discovered her a couple years back. The lady I'm talking about is Sigrid Nunez, and the book is called The Friend. This book was a National Book Award winner. I'm not sure of the year, but anyway, in this book, we are focusing on the relationship between this woman and her male friend, who happens to be a professor at an Ivy League university. And she finds out this really deplorable history of his, of having affairs with his students and all the horrible things he did during his life after he passes away. After his untimely death, she discovers all of these things by reading diary entries of his and letters and talking to one of his ex-wives. She's also entrusted to look after his Great Dane, who he had left behind. She has no experience at raising a dog or taking care of a dog. In fact, she doesn't even like dogs in any particular way, so it's very interesting that she's forced into this situation with his Great Dane. She's grappling with grief. She's holed up in her apartment with this dog. She forms a bond with it and is so interesting. It's a very quiet and introspective novel that kind of creeps up on you as you're reading it. And I really didn't get the full scope of how much I loved this book until after I was finished reading it. And that was a great surprise. I was reading and I thought, okay, this is okay. I can get on board with this. The way it's written is like kind of stream of consciousness writing, where there's a lot of very long sentences, but it's not hard to follow what's going on. It's not hard to get into. Once you get used to the style in which it's written, you won't want to leave this book. You'll want to keep reading it until the very end. It clocks in at under 200 pages. It's about, just 205. So it's very short, but very impactful book. Left me thinking about it long after I'd finished reading it. So highly recommend The Friend, Sigrid Nunez. Particularly this one if you're looking for something, like I said, a little quieter and more introspective, and just a novel that kind of makes you think about your own relationships. Next one doesn't need any introduction. I'm talking about The Great Gatsby, one of my favorite books of all time. I love F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing. I also love Tender is the Night. Is that what it's called? Yeah, but this, one of my all-time favorite books. It's very short, very impactful. There's something inherently magical to me about reading a book that's 100 years old. And that said, knowing the history of him and his life, he died at a very young age, and I just get a sense of melancholy going into this, just knowing F. Scott Fitzgerald, his history and his problems and stuff. So this book was something else. It packs a huge punch. The relationships in here, the morality involved. There's a scene that's really quite gruesome that I didn't expect. A plot twist. So yeah, twisty, kind of soap opera-ish in places. He really liked to write about married people and people, like a lot of love relationship type of stuff, but it's not done in a corny, sappy way. It's it's so interesting. Pick this up if you want to read a classic over a weekend or in a day. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Next one I have is a translated Japanese book called Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. This one I read a couple of years ago and I absolutely loved it. There's just something inherently gentle and soothing about reading a Japanese translated book. Just the way that it's written is very gripping, but in a very gentle way, if that makes any sense at all. In this book, we are following 25-year-old Takako, She's a woman who has just found out that her fiance has been cheating on her and he's leaving her for another woman. He gets married to this other woman shortly after, so she is understandably absolutely devastated. Meanwhile, an uncle of hers, who she really hasn't had much of a relationship with, owns a bookshop, I believe. Yeah, and his life isn't that exciting, so he offers for her to come and live with him. She's lost her job. She was so devastated after the breakup of her relationship, she fell into a deep depression. So this is a story of how taking on a job at the bookshop and living above the bookstore at her uncle's place helps her to heal, helps her to find out more about herself and what she wants out of life. And it's just so inspiring. It's heartwarming, and it's really refreshing to me to read a book about a non-romantic relationship that is just as powerful as a different type of love relationship. So it is so well done, very short. It's kind of like what I'd call a cozy type of book that, yeah, you won't want to stop reading until you get to the end. So yes, highly recommend Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. Hope I got that right. The next book I have here is a somewhat controversial, well, not controversial in content, but as far as people's opinions of it. It was a much ballyhooed book that won some book prizes and very polarizing. People either loved it or hated it. I'm happy to say I fall into the loved it category. And the book I'm talking about is Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. Now, if you are a fan of foreshadowing, of a book that's dark, of a book that goes into someone's psyche quite deeply and is told from a stream of consciousness kind of point of view, it reads like one big run-on sentence. I'm not going to lie, that structure might put people off. Once I got into this, I couldn't stop reading it. We focus on a woman who has moved in with her brother after being kind of estranged from her family for a while to help him. He's going through a divorce, and yeah, she moves to this small town, and she's not exactly well received in this place. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm just going to say the more you read, the kind of darker it gets, and the more it makes you think. This had me examining my own life and my own relationships with my family, just from the point of view of a daughter. And I don't have brothers, but you know, I could still relate to a lot of what this character was thinking. Yeah, it was just so deep and so impactful. I found I was thinking about it for quite a while after I stopped reading it. And it's written, the text is very sparse and well spaced out. So even though it reads like one big sentence, there's not a lot of breaks. It's very fast to read. It comes in at about, yeah, just under 200 pages. So highly recommend. This one, yeah, it won the Booker Prize in 2023. So I'm glad I enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what I'd get into, but I definitely recommend it. Get it from your library if you're not sure, and then there's zero risk involved. If you don't like it, you don't like it. The last book I want to talk about is an author who, reading her works, to me, is like eating a decadent dessert. It's best consumed slowly and savored, and I'm talking about Toni Morrison, Jazz. Now, I haven't read all her books. I have yet to read some of her most famous books, like The Bluest Eye. That's on my TBR, my ever-expanding TBR. But this is a book that you can read in 1 or 2 sittings. I read it in a day. Absolutely loved it. In this book, we are following the character of Joe, who is a middle-aged waiter who moonlights as a door-to-door salesman of beauty products. He shoots his teenage lover to death. At the funeral, Joe's wife, Violet, attacks the girl's corpse. There's a big opening scene at the funeral where Violet's pissed and she wants to get revenge. She doesn't know what to do with her emotions. She just attacks the girl in the coffin, and the story ensues from there. So if that's not a beginning that will get your attention, I don't know what is. Like I said, with Toni Morrison, you can tell she is a poet. The language is beautiful. Like I said, it's like a rich, decadent dessert to me, consuming her words and her stories. I absolutely love this. I read Song of Solomon. I like this one more. And this one is, like I said, it's a pretty short little book that packs a powerful punch. If you're new to Toni Morrison, it's a very easily consumable book. It's not complicated to get into. It's a pretty straightforward story. And I highly recommend this. I hope if you read this, you enjoy it as much as I did, as with all the other books I've talked about today. So, Jazz by Toni Morrison, Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa, The Great Gatsby, a perennial favorite, The Friend by Sigrid Nunez, The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Sun-Mi Hwang, and then Address Unknown by Katherine Kressman Taylor. Thank you so much for watching my video about teeny tiny books that pack a powerful punch. I hope you do check some of these out, and I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy whatever you're reading, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.